Trump and I have a very different value set, if it isn't obvious already. Mine is based on core values that have defined America, and the rest of the world looks at us that way. Decency, honesty, fairness, equality. But we all know Donald Trump sees a different America. An American story of resentment, revenge, and retribution. That's not me, that's not you.
So the president did an interview today. President Biden spoke with Jonathan Capehart on MSNBC. Share with you a few moments from that in a moment. But what I find really, it's actually refreshing. And I'll let you know, he apologizes. He apologizes for using the language that perhaps he would be more at home from somebody being rude and xenophobic about immigrants. And the context of how he said it and when he said it, it's just really good that he's set out what he meant to say, and just to make sure there's no interpretations, he said he apologizes for using certain words. There's not really any apology there, but for me, it just shows the huge, there isn't a thin line, by the way. Sometimes in politics there's a thin line between one candidate and another candidate. There is not a thin line between what the former losing president of the United States of America, one Diaper Don, says, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, in comparison to President Biden. There really is no thin line. And one thing as well, I think it's a sign of strength and a sign of confidence as well if you apologize when you get things wrong. I have never seen Trump or Marjorie Taylor Greene apologize for anything. There's a lot of apologies. Oh dear, well, where do you want me to start? Or where do you want me to finish?
Look of surprise on your face when you walked into the chamber and you saw Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. It was priceless. You feigned shock at seeing her. But during your response to her heckling of you, you used the word illegal when talking about the man who allegedly killed Laken Riley.
An undocumented person. And I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented. And look, when I spoke about the difference between Trump and me, one of the things I talked about on the border was that the way he talks about vermin, the way he talks about these people polluting the blood. I talked about what I'm not going to do, what I won't do. I'm not going to treat any of these people with disrespect. Look, they built the country. The reason our economy is growing. We have to control the border and a more orderly flow, but I don't share his view at all.
So you regret using that word?
Yes.
What's your response to that widely shared sentiment?
It's not widely shared. You guys make judgments you're not capable of making. That's not what all those people said. What they said was they're very upset, and I don't blame them for being upset. There's families there. There are people who are dying. They want something done about it. And they're saying, Joe, do something. Do something. But the idea that they all think it's genocide is just not, that's a different situation. Look.
What is your red line with Prime Minister Netanyahu? Do you have a red line? For instance, would invasion of Rafah, which you have urged him not to do, would that be a red line?
It is a red line, but I'm never going to leave Israel. The defense of Israel is still critical. So there's no red line. I'm going to cut off all weapons so they don't have the Iron Dome to protect them. They don't have. But there's red lines that if he crosses, he cannot have 30,000 more Palestinians dead as a consequence of going after. There's other ways to deal with the trauma caused by Hamas. It's like look, the first time I went over, I sat with them and I sat with the war cabinet. I said, look, don't make the mistake America made. America made a mistake. We went after bin Laden until we got him. But we shouldn't have gone into Ukraine. I mean, we shouldn't have gone into the whole thing in Iraq and Afghanistan. It wasn't necessary. It wasn't necessary. And it just caused more problems than it raised, than it cured.
Let's talk about the temporary pier that you announced during your State of the Union address to get supplies into Gaza. It's going to take 60 days to get that constructed. What more are you doing in the absence of cooperation from Netanyahu and a bill from Congress to get supplies into Gaza, more humanitarian aid into Gaza?
Everything we can. We're pressuring Israel to open up access in the north from Israel. We're also doing airdrops. I know several people were killed with the airdrop. There's a way to avoid that in the future. We're working with our Arab friends to figure out how much we can get in. Everything, look, it's a desperate situation. food, medicine, everything needed. They're badly needed, and it's needed now.
Mr. President, it's great to see you again. Thank you for
Good to
doing
see you.
this. So that was one hell of a speech you gave Thursday night. I'm going to touch on three specific areas there. The first one being, I noticed the look of surprise on your face when you walked into the chamber and you saw Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. It was priceless. You feigned shock at seeing her. But during your response to her heckling of you, you used the word illegal when talking about the man who allegedly killed Laken Riley.
An undocumented person. And I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented. And look, when I spoke about the difference between Trump and me, one of the things I talked about on the border was that the way he talks about vermin, the way he talks about these people polluting the blood. I talked about what I'm not going to do, what I won't do. I'm not going to treat any of these people with disrespect. Look, they built the country. The reason our economy is growing. We have to control the border and a more orderly flow, but I don't share his view at all.
So you regret using that word?
Yes.
You were caught on a hot mic after your State of the Union address talking to Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Senator Michael Bennet saying, quote, I told him, Bibi, and don't repeat this, but you and I are going to have a come to Jesus meeting. What do you mean by that? What
I meant was, it's an expression used in the southern part of my state, meaning a serious meeting. And it was, I've known Bibi for 50 years, and he knew what I meant by it.
So what's the come to Jesus part? Like, what tough love are you going to give to the prime minister?
What's happening is he has a right to defend Israel, a right to continue to pursue Hamas, but he must pay more attention to the innocent lives being lost as a consequence of the actions taken. He's hurting, in my view, he's hurting Israel more than helping Israel by making the rest of the world, it's contrary to what Israel stands for. And I think it's a
Latasha, we got our hands on the prepared rally remarks for Donald Trump in Rome, Georgia. It's what he's kind of talking about right now. And one thing that he had in these prepared rally remarks was the following, quote, we will restore law and order to our country. My footnote, kind of ironic coming from somebody who's been indicted 4 times. But this is what he says. I am going to indemnify all police officers and law enforcement officials throughout the United States to protect them from being destroyed by the radical left for taking strong actions on crime. Latasha, your thoughts about a promise from Donald Trump to, quote, indemnify all police officers and law enforcement officials throughout the United States. I foresee, if that were to happen, an incredibly violent and destructive world for all Americans and not just for a particular subset of Americans.
Oh, absolutely. He is telling us right in our faces that he is literally a fascist. He's telling us that he wants to turn this nation into a police state. He is telling us that he will disregard the rule of law and literally use his power and think of himself as a dictator to actually weaponize the police force instead of seeing it as a safety and security for people, that in fact that he will weaponize them against communities and people. He's a dangerous man. I think that it should be loud and clear that Donald Trump is a clear and present danger to this nation and to the democracy.
I noticed the look of surprise on your face when you walked into the chamber and you saw Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. It was priceless. You feigned shock at seeing her. But during your response to her heckling of you, you used the word illegal when talking about the man who allegedly killed Laken Riley.
An undocumented person. And I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented. And look, when I spoke about the difference between Trump and me, one of the things I talked about on the border was that the way he talks about vermin, the way he talks about these people polluting the blood. I talked about what I'm not going to do, what I won't do. I'm not going to treat any of these people with disrespect. Look, they built the country. The reason our economy is growing. We have to control the border and a more orderly flow, but I don't share his view at all.
So you regret using that word?
Yes.